Hi! I'm so excited to be here with you guys. Okay. So tonight, first of all, I'm Lucy, and I'm a junior at Chaska High School, and I'm just going to share with you tonight my story of hope, joy, and freedom, and how I found those in Jesus Christ and continue to see Jesus working in my life. So I grew up in a Christian home where my parents took my sisters and I to church every Sunday. So by the time I was 5, I was really good at coloring like tunics on people from the Bible, and I knew all the latest tunic fashion trends. We would listen to Christian music, we would pray before breakfast, we'd pray before dinner, we'd pray before bed, and we essentially did everything that good Christians are supposed to do. I first remember accepting Christ into my life when I was 9 years old at a winter retreat with my church. And everything went fine, went swimmingly up until 6th grade. In 6th grade, I started to question everything. I would ask why the sky was blue, why I had to clean my room, if I really had to learn how to divide fractions if I had a calculator, and if God was real. And I really struggled with this because I had just remembered that in my family, we just believe without question. This is what it was. And I had built up such a community of friends and fellow believers and fellow Christians that I was scared that if I shared these doubts or I spoke about these doubts, that I would lose them. So in 8th grade, I continued to just tell myself, well, I'm not going to die soon, so I don't need to know if Jesus is real. But in 9th grade, at my church, we did this thing called confirmation. And it's essentially, not confirmation, it's upper room. And that's what other churches call confirmation. So it's looking into theology and why we believe this and why we believe that. And then at the end, we would get up in front of our friends and family and tell them that we believe in Jesus and just this big celebration. And so I set this date in the beginning of May as the day that I had to decide what I thought, to decide what I believed in, because I wasn't okay with getting up in front of my friends and family and essentially lying. So I set this as the date, and this kick-started an adventure. I went to different seminars at my church. It was usually me and all these old guys listening to some scientist. I watched movies, which are super reliable. I read books, I researched online, and I had all these different conversations, all to discover whether or not Jesus was real. And for myself, by the date that May came, I had succeeded. I knew that Jesus lived on this earth, walked the earth, died a real death, and rose again. And that's what I had set out. However, I was thinking that after I made that realization, my life would be completely different. And it wasn't. I still kept living as I thought Christians should live, but there wasn't a huge 180. And I was really mad because I had heard all these stories at all these places of how people made this realization and they knew instantly that everything was different. And I couldn't honestly tell a difference. So I was really upset about that. Then the summer going into my 10th grade year, I went with my church to Colorado for camp. It was a week, and I can tell you that when I came back, I was different. I can't tell you what night it happened on. I can't tell you what worship song it was during. I can't tell you anything other than the fact that when I came back, I know something was different. I knew Jesus was with me everywhere I went. I knew that I was never alone. I had joy, I had hope, I had peace, I had freedom. And it's nothing that I can tell you, logically, this is what happened. It was these 3 steps, because I don't even know to this day. And I'm thankful that I haven't had a huge struggle in my life, but at the same time, I so wanted one. I would sit there in church oh, God, please, let my parents get divorced, or please, because that's what they were preaching about. And so I was so upset that I hadn't had this struggle, and I thought that Jesus wasn't for me, because I didn't need him. And I wanted to find God like all these stories that I had heard. And I realize now that the struggles in our lives are not what make us give our life to Christ. It's simply what brings us to the foot of Jesus' feet, opens our eyes, and lets us lean on him. And for me, that was evidence, and that was science, and that was history, and that was fact. I didn't have to have one of those big singular moments. And I'm still learning that to this day, that my story is not less than, and Jesus is still for me. For so long, I had this head knowledge, and I knew so much about God. I could tell you so much. I knew so much from Sunday school that I could sing a song for every Bible story. I still can, and I know actions for some of them. But I had to make the heart realization. I had to have a personal relationship with Jesus in my heart, not just know about him. So to the students who are sitting in their environmental science classes, their biology classes, their earth science classes, please know this one thing. Your belief in science and history and fact does not mean you can't believe in God. I so strongly believe, and if I could, I would stand up here for 5 minutes and just tell you evidence and facts and spit it out at you. But that does not mean that you can't believe in God. And to the student who's never heard this message before or who grew up in a Christian home and is having doubts, there's nothing wrong with you. Doubts are our way of making our faith our own, which as students is something that we have to go through. Doubts are what we experience as humans because we can't see the big picture like God can. So we doubt. And I know that that's not what you want to hear because that's not what I wanted to hear. But Jesus knows more than science can explain. Science is great, and science is catching snippets of what God has done. And that's why I love science. But I've had to make the realization that Jesus knows more than I ever will. And now I have hit some road bumps in my life, and life has gotten harder, so I've had a chance to turn to Jesus. My parents didn't get divorced, but I have had these things where my life has gotten harder. And I'm free to live in Jesus' unending knowledge. And friends, I said this, but I don't know how to put this in words. I just know that my life is different with Jesus. It's so much easier, it's so much better, even though it's so much harder. I'm free to live joyfully when things that are sucky in life are telling me that I should be sad. I'm free from having to have all the answers because my God knows better than I ever will. Hebrews 11:1 says, "Now faith is the reality of confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. By faith we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was made from things that are not visible." Okay, and I understand. If you're anything like me a few years ago, that means absolutely nothing because you think the Bible is a fairy tale. But just listen, God knew. God knew we would doubt. You're not the only one having doubts. You're not alone. Jesus knew. And so I think that speaks to the amazing power of God when we realize that he knew we would doubt. So he knows everything. He wants us to look into those doubts so that we can fully worship God with our mind. I have faith in Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior because I am persuaded by relevant evidence that he really was God in the flesh, that he lived and walked the roads of Galilee and Judea 2,000 years ago, that he died on the cross for my sins and for yours, and that today he lives in the hearts of those who trust in him. And so I respond by trusting God with the details of my everyday life. And that's the part that I hadn't realized until that summer. I had the head knowledge, but it hadn't transferred to my heart. I had to respond by trusting God with the details of my life. And so now I still go to church on Sundays. I still listen to Christian songs. I pray before I eat, and I volunteer on Sundays. So I still know all the latest tunic fashion trends. But now it's to further my relationship with God, not just to know more about him, but to truly know him. And I want to leave you with this. Einstein once said, "The more I study science, the more I believe in God." Thank you.